pull up Google, find our SEO guide. We compiled, by we I mean our co-founder Mez, who is one of the smartest SEO people out there. He put together an ebook. It's about 100 pages, but essentially it's all of the learnings that we've gleaned by reviewing millions of URLs, by reading tons of studies. And what we have learned is that there are 3 core elements to SEO. There's technical SEO, there's relevance, which has to do with like your content, and then there's domain authority, has to do with links and other things. But essentially, these are the 3 core elements. And it's important to focus on these 3 when you're trying to drive better results. So let's talk about step 1. Let's talk about technical SEO. I think that this is something, as part of my job, I get to look at tons of websites. I look at, I do lots of audits. I work with lots of newer businesses. And one of the things that I feel like people don't spend enough time on is good keyword research to understand what their potential customers are looking for, what types of terms the competitors are ranking for. But if you want good technical SEO, and by technical SEO, in this context, I'm talking about site taxonomy, I'm talking about site structure, URL structure, what sort of content and pages are you going to have? And I believe that what you should do is you should start with the end in mind. You should work backwards. You should do in-depth keyword research. One of my favorite tools to use for this is SEMrush or SEMrush. One day, maybe we'll figure out what the right answer is there. But look, put in your competition, and it's a great way for you to learn what terms they're ranking for, what terms are driving traffic, how competitive they are, what URL it's pointing to, and you should structure your site similarly, all right? You want to make sure that the pages that get the most search volume are the ones you focus on the most. I feel like technical SEO is A, one of the easier things to do, but B, it often gets overlooked and rushed over. Spend more time understanding how people search so that you can organize your website based on what they're looking for. All right. A good example of this is a client that we did work for. They sold dresses. And look, our research quickly showed us that there's like 2,000 different ways to look for dresses. Actually, our research showed that men look for dresses in about 10 and women look for dresses in about 1,600 different ways. But even with all of the various and different types of, ways to look for dresses, we figured that it was actually broken down into about 6 or 7 different categories. For example, like dress type. Is it a casual? Is it a day? Is it an evening? What about length? Regular, long, mini, style? Something like, is it a wrap? Is it an off the shoulder, strapless? Price, sizes. And so what we did is that we helped this client structure their website and their categories so that each one of these major categories that we found that people typically searched under, we created pages that fit into these categories. All right. And a good way to understand this, and this goes into step 2, which is the relevance. But once you have a good technical foundation, then it helps with your step 2 and the relevance. But look, a really good way to go about this is to structure your site sort of like this. You'll have your homepage that sort of talks about most things that you do. Right underneath it, you'll have topic pages, and then you should have subtopic pages, and then you should have posts or information that support or talk about the next step up. This is a great opportunity to interlink. This is a great way to build content. And we've started to adopt this sort of content approach when we're working with our clients, and we've seen amazing results. I'm actually going to show you some of the case studies or some of the results that we've been able to drive using this sort of system, okay? And this works for e-commerce too, all right? Sometimes when I talk about content, the e-commerce folks just kind of roll their eyes back in their head and, no, you need better content and a little bit more content than what you think you need. And what I mean by that is that one of the things we start to see is that I see people skip these 2 steps and go right to a blog, okay? They skip category, subcategory, and they create blogs, and they have maybe like service or product pages, and then they just start to write a lot of blogs. You don't need as many blogs as you think. What you need is better category and subcategory content, all right? In fact, I think, turns out my next slide goes, talks about that. What we found is that there's a direct correlation with how much content you have and your rankings with Google. If you look at pages across the internet, the average comes out to about 1,960, 2,000 words. There's that. If you have that much content, you're more likely to rank in the top 3 positions. This is different per vertical and per industry. A good way to understand this, though, is to look at, again, your competition, see how much content they have, and then make sure you're adding a little bit more to it. All right. So back, just to further, back up what I said, it's really not about posting 2 or 3 blogs every single week anymore. That hasn't worked in a while. It's about making the content that you have a little bit better. In fact, one of the things that we're doing, that we're seeing some tremendous results, is instead of producing a ton of new content, we're going back and adding more content to clients' websites. So for example, let's say that their homepage has 2,000 words, we'll add 1,000 words more. Let's say their category page has 500, we'll add 1,000 words more. Your main pages, you should be adding more content so that you are a better answer. All right. So another way to think about this is that, look, I look at search trends, and I look at what's happening here in the States to give me a pretty good signal of what's to come. And what we're seeing here is that educational information like content that just has a lot of references, or that has just, again, more, okay? It seems to be ranking higher and higher and higher. And I think this is because user behavior has changed. We're far more likely to do our own research. We're far more likely to spend more time on the internet learning about what we want. Buyers are way okay with reading, 4 or 5 different articles about a product that they're about to buy. And so Google has seen that this is what's happening. And so they're starting to rank websites that take that same approach. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about, because again, we're talking about relevance, and that has everything to do with your website and the content. I want to talk a little bit about EAT and, your money, your life. So if you're listening to this presentation and you happen to have a website that deals with health or with finance, one of the major Google updates that we've seen over the last couple of years is the Your Money, Your Life. And then, their best practices is the EAT, the expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness. And what I would recommend is that, especially, I think you should practice the expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness in any, if you're writing content, you should be considering that. But look, if you're especially in one of those verticals, that's the Your Money, Your Life category, make sure you spend more time focusing on this, on making sure that your content is just really, really good, or else you're going to have a really hard time ranking. Okay. If it affects your money, if it affects your life, you have to up your content game. It has to be better than what you're used to. It has to be better than what you produced a few years ago. And that's true for most categories, but especially for the YMYL categories.